All right, today I'm joined by Anna Crowe, CEO of Crowe Media. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on, James.
Awesome. Would love to really start off with you launched Crowe, originally Crowe PR. Kind of what did you initially build and what were you looking forward to building then when you started the agency and what has it evolved or turned into or what's been different about kind of where we're at today?
Yeah, great question. What has not been different, right? When I started the agency, it was 2015, and I really started it as a PR first company. So communications, leveraging storytelling and earned to drive brand growth. That was the impetus for the whole thing, is just how can we tell really cool stories about companies that are authentic to the brands and help drive business growth with that. And as we continue to evolve and grew the agency, as you know, the world continued to shift, and the Facebook became Meta, and we had this insurgence of social media and cultural adaptability to social media. And then we had the influencer movement, now known as content creator movement. So we also evolved because it changed storytelling, and it changed from a perspective of where people were getting their stories and how they were engaging with brands. And so we evolved the agency in the same way. So we started with earned media on the PR side, and press events and thought leadership, to then layering in influencer marketing, content creation, and then social media. And then over the last few years, we said, okay, everything is continuing to move. And now we've got the AI movement that is so much more mainstream than it has ever been before, which means that our brands, the clients of our brands and the customers of our brands are getting their information through new sources. And so we really evolved the agency and launched Crowe Media, which is what I run now, which has the PR elements, the social elements, influencer, coupled with studios, which is more of a content creation, video storytelling, coupled with performance marketing, and a few other layers such as insights.
Amazing. Yeah, continue to build on layers. That's what I kind of see is it's a struggle, but also an opportunity is the more the media environment and device environment continues to evolve and change, it creates a lot of complexity, but also a lot of opportunity. And is that what you kind of saw and took on was it your clients were demanding more from you as an agency, or was it that you saw more opportunities and more things to sell, more things to offer to new clients, or maybe a combination of both?
Yeah, I'd say it's the latter primarily, only because up to the point of the market has looked so different now. And what we were doing for our clients was really making sure that our reputation was in really great shape and they had visibility. And nowadays, the visibility element just looks different. And so we saw this opportunity to say, okay, how do we leverage these other channels to create visibility, and more so than visibility, create trust? Right? A lot of what we do is based around trust, because we know that trust is really what makes a business sustainable. And we have these fads and overnight successes, and sometimes they'll continue for many, many years because they've built that customer advocacy and trust. And other times trust is broken and they do not. And so it's really just identifying the opportunities to further elevate the trust and visibility and drive those sales for our customers. And that looks different, right? Because for our e-commerce brands, it's online sales, it's online engagement with their customers through their social platforms. It's all these things, or offline activations and getting customers to come out to where they are. For our health and technologies companies, it's, conversations with providers, it's patients looking for them when they're examining different options and things of that nature. Or for our travel clients, it's capacity at hotels or average daily rates increases. So they all have different success metrics and KPIs, but the idea is the same: is building that visibility, building trust, engagement, and driving for sales.
Got it. Amazing. Yeah, 'cause I mean, a lot of different industries in there, and I think some marketers, some brands always think oh, you have to just stick within one vertical or niche. But do you really see as no, there's a core foundation that works across all, and then it's how do you respond to each individual niche or vertical? It's the trust and visibility, regardless of what industry you're in, have to be there with consumers. But how you portray that, how you message that audience, or what audience you're reaching on which platforms, that kind of evolves and changes in terms of the tactics. But is it the strategy? If regardless of what industry a brand comes to you with, what's the foundation they need to build their PR and reputation on?
Yeah, I think, you hit that. I think trust and that visibility is paramount regardless of what industry we operate. and you're going to have nuances, right? There are certain things you can do in the digital world that may work for a supplement brand. They may not work for an alcohol brand. They may not work for a healthcare brand. So understanding those industries is critical. But at the end of the day, and finding the right levers to pull with them. Influencer marketing is something we do for a lot of our clients, but not for all. That may not be the right path for all brands. Similarly with organic social media, it has such a complex space, as you know, and it changes daily. And clients will say, okay, do I have to post every day, all day? Do I have to create reels? Do I have to create videos? Like, that my full-time job? And for many brands, being part of cultural conversations is really, really important. Whereas for other brands, it may be less important. So yes, it does certainly depend on the industry, but at the end of the day, that core element is building trust, building that reputation, and then putting a megaphone to it and projecting it so that we can engage the audiences that they're looking to engage with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What do you see as like what's the biggest challenge right now for brands that they're concerned about? Is it the fragmentation across multiple different devices and platforms and this feeling and need that I have to be everywhere and it's overwhelming? Like what's the core issue you think most brands are dealing with?
Yeah, it's certainly one of them because our audiences are so fragmented. And we know that people spend over 6 hours a day on average on mobile devices and then also looking across all different platforms, right? So, whereas in the past, we had one or two social media platforms that were really dominating. Now there's a lot more volume. And, Instagram alone is coming up with new updates every other day. Even I'm going, do I need to do these instas? What's going on? Like, let's look into this, right? And so that's definitely one of them is how do we capture the audiences and compete in a very competitive space? And the other one is how do I get into AI, generative AI? How am I going to get ChatGPT or Gemini or anyone else to recommend me as a company? And the cool thing in the PR world right now is that earned media is such a big part of driving that. We know that those third party publications, magazines, digital outlets, blogs are driving and educating AI. And so when we're having a really good campaign, when we're putting a strategic PR campaign, that's also helping that in addition to own content, which we talk about with brands. And I'd say the other thing is a lot of C-suite is starting to figure out that their thought leadership platform is also important. And there's confusion. What does that look like? Do I have to, sing on camera on Instagram now just to get attention about my health brand? No, maybe not. But there is this opportunity to be more visible and to really what we call humanize the brand. I think the audiences are very discerning, especially Gen Z audiences. They're very discerning. Trust can be broken very quickly. And a lot of people want to understand and trust brands, especially in the age of AI. What's real, what's not real, and understanding how to humanize the brand while maximizing your budget is certainly something that a lot of our clients are thinking about.
Yeah, probably one of the most interesting outlets of the social media era is the rise of personal brands, right? It's been since the beginning, it's been personal brands have outperformed, I think, individual like brand specific corporate style pages, right? Just in terms of followership and engagement, and everything is people want to resonate and connect with an authentic person rather than a brand figurehead or something like that.
Mhm.
Is that something that you encourage, especially more in like the B2B space? Whereas I think they kind of like are lacking behind or versus consumers in terms of like personal brand engagement and stuff. But where do you see is the opportunities for founders to get more involved on social media?
Yeah, I think for C-suite in general, whether you're a founder, CEO, or CMO or CSO, and you name it, I think it is important to be quote unquote out there. Now that may look different, right? There's the online presence that you're talking about and being on LinkedIn or writing content and sharing that or submitting your articles for publication in industry press. Those are all important online components. Not only do they drive AEO and GEO, which we're talking about with regards to AI, but also they help build trust, help build visibility and all that and get momentum. And there's the offline element, right? Of being on panels, of speaking at different conferences and showing that expertise, engaging with brands and humans in different ways. So if you it could be a full-time job doing it, honestly. And that's very tough to do. However, you don't have to make that a full-time job. You just have to be strategic. And we advise our C-suite to be strategic and build a strategy. What is the right volume? What is the right message? What are the right avenues? Where are your decision makers and where are your stakeholders? And let's be there and let's engage and connect with them in an organic way. And sometimes amplify that as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think the other thing that's been a real big challenge that's continues to evolve with all the different platforms is all the content. Like we see it on the paid side is an ad that works really well on Facebook and Instagram. You push it on TikTok, it doesn't work as well.
Yeah.
That's been a huge challenge of like, how do you creatively adapt and create content that resonates organically and paid on different platforms and channels? Because there's no longer a time when you can just take one spot, chop it up, and push it across multiple
So
different
true.
channels.
So
Um,
true.
yeah, I'd see like, how do you see that kind of playing out and working? Like, does AI help with creating more relevant content or adapting it for different social channels? Like, what do you see working there?
So interesting. I mentioned earlier, I just got back from Cannes Lions Festival of Creativity, and I went last year as well. And what was different about the AI conversation is that last year, first of all, every panel talked about AI, obviously. And it was all about, how do I use AI to create content? How do I use AI to boost things? How do I use AI? And this year, it almost seemed that there was this AI exhaustion, and there was you know, customers didn't like a lot of the content produced by AI. Even during the Super Bowl halftime show, there was, or not the halftime show, the ads and Super Bowl, people were like, wait a second, this isn't human. This is right. So now there's, okay, well, AI is not going away. We know this, but how do we lead with the human element and leverage AI to help execute some things, but not replace it? And so, yeah, I think AI can certainly make things faster, and it can be a great creative partner. And I think we're still all figuring out the best way to use it, because frankly, the way we use it 6 months has evolved, and the way we're going to use it 6 months from now will evolve. So I think anytime we can save ourselves some, create operational efficiencies and save some time, fantastic. And I don't think it's going to replace creativity in the way that we had originally perhaps thought. Or to your point about content, it may be able to chop up different videos. Fantastic, save time. But at the end of the day, we still need to conceptualize, how is TikTok performing differently than Instagram? Now, it can also pull some insights, and then we don't have to spend time researching, but there's a requirement still to really think creatively and adapt continuously, because you know better than I do about the algorithms changing continuously in that performance space too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything's going more to unique concepts around creative and testing different concept A
Mhm.
versus concept B. And I think this happens organically and also happens in the paid environment. It's very similar. But if you can kind of comprehend and figure out, how do I build out a unique concept and have different variations within a concept, and
Mhm.
then build out a different one and then have those two things test, that kind of tends to work really well right now. And I think that's where the challenge though is like, how do you figure out what that right strategy direction is and do it quickly and fast enough? Because the biggest challenge is you need so much higher volume of
Yeah.
content to test, especially as you scale up, mattering how much media spin that you're running, is the volume of content has just skyrocketed in terms of what you really need to scale a high performing campaign. I think that's one of the biggest challenges from a paid perspective right now.
I hear you. And isn't it so interesting also that you can run the same test the first week of June, and you can run that same test the second week of August, and you may get different results because of everything else that's being fed and everything else that's going on. And so timing is also critical. Trends are critical. A lot of the things we're seeing now is also, this trend spotting and understanding how to be part of trending conversational and cultural moments. And sometimes I'll look at content, it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, why did this go viral? I don't understand what happened, right? And other times you have a piece of content that's so good, like this is going to be great, and nothing happens. And so to your point, I love what you said about testing. And it's the same thing in our world too, testing different things with creator partnerships and influencer collaborations. It's also very similar. They may have a very engaged audience, and we used to look at follower count, right? We say, well, this influencer has 100,000 followers. This one has 50. Now we're also looking at things like shares and saves. And we don't really care so much about the high numbers as much as we do how engaged is the audience. because there's so many other ways to gamify those things these days. So, and that again is also in flux and in motion. So I just find it really fascinating and interesting because we do get to learn and test and do cool things on an ongoing basis. Sometimes it's tiring. I'm sure you can relate.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's also it's never dull. It's never dull moment.
It just keeps evolving and get more intricate. Like that, I think the shares and engagement thing is a great example because like I look at things as like the value per impression. So what like an impression served on a display banner on ESPN versus a video on Facebook versus a video on a connected TV Hulu ad. All those are counted as impressions, but all have different values. And I think the same thing happens in the influence world. Like an impression that gets served to somebody on a big, creator versus a small creator, the value is really based on the engagement and did somebody see and interact with it? Like that's the value. And we, track and look at value differently from a paid environment too. But I think that's what gets challenging and so unique is like how intricate you can go with these things. You can keep diving another layer deeper to figure out what's working, what's impactful for brands, for audiences. But at the end of the day, the internet decides
Right.
what's good and what's bad. The
Right.
internet decides like what goes viral. The internet decides what ad works. Like it's the people that you reach and the data that you get back that decide like what's a winner versus a loser.
Yeah.
And you never
And
know when we launch something.
100%. You can do your best and, and it can be an incredible success. The good news is you can pivot pretty quickly these days too, right? You don't have to take out a full page ad that may take you 2 weeks to do. And that brings me to also the earned media piece. Some brands will ask us, okay, well, is print still a thing? Should we be in print magazines or do we wanna be on TV? Do we wanna be on the radio? What about digital, right? And similarly, as you talk about it, also they all serve their own purpose. It's all storytelling and audiences are so fragmented and audiences are so wide and get their information differently and engage differently that yes, and they all work for different purposes. And I think nowadays, I forget what the new number is, but remember it used to be 7 impressions for someone to see the message for the first time. Someone told me a couple years ago it was 30, and I recently read it was 50. I don't know what the right number is,
Yeah.
but I believe it. I
Right.
believe, and even with my own experience, I will sometimes need to hear something or see something several times and go, "Oh, I had no idea that this was on sale." And then someone's like, "This is the 10th time I'm telling you this story."
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, I think that's the frequency element is always evolving and changing. I think I just read another report where they came to a conclusion like we just don't know. Like it
Just
varies. We're like, we're not gonna set a number on it. It varies by industry, by brand, by, offer, by everything. Like, there's just so much complexity in it. At the end of the day, people receive somewhere between like 3,000 to 5,000 brand advertising messages per day. I can't get over myself when I say something like, "Oh, you just need to reach them 7 times in a month." It's just like
right.
they're also at the same time receiving like 50,000 messages a month from different brands. So there's just like everybody's trying to grab attention and we're all competing for attention. I think that's the biggest challenge now is like attention seeking on every level and who can grab attention in different ways is what we're really doing. And there's just so much competition. Like you're not competing just against, you know, an adjacent brand or competitor. You're competing against everybody that's also marketing to your same audience at the same time. From a
Yes.
social organic standpoint, from a paid perspective, from an earned, like we're all competing for that consumer's attention, whoever you're trying to reach. And so I think that's the biggest challenge that people have to kind of take a step back and be like, look at the full dynamics of your average everyday person and what they experience.
Absolutely. And it reminds me of a lot of brands are going offline now, right, to complement that. So doing activations at Coachella, doing activations in France, doing events for influencers, media, and their customers, and finding ways to get those eyeballs,
Right.
outside and not just online. Because to your point, you have to spend millions and millions of dollars to be the top at all times. It's physically impossible for most brands. And so I think that's one of them. And then there's something else I was going to say about that and I forgot already, so never mind. It'll come back to me.
No,
But yeah, the competition is fierce. Oh, I know. I was going to tell you a story. When we started working with Screwball Peanut Butter Whiskey 8 or 9 years ago, for example, it was the only peanut butter whiskey. It was the original peanut butter whiskey. And obviously the digital landscape looked different back then. And still similar strategy of getting earned press, getting social media, getting influencer marketing, getting all that storytelling levers pulled in the right way. And you could say we're the only one. Fast forward, there's many, 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 many peanut butter brands, whiskey brands. And now you have to rest on your laurels of your value of proposition and all the things. And yes, you've got brand equity now, but you're now in a different competitive space, right? And so similarly for everything, your supplement brands, there's many, many, many of those. So you really have to be clear to your audiences on what your brand stands for and creating that engagement and those engagement opportunities where it's not just look at me, I'm amazing. Look at us, look at us. It's really how do I capture, how do I humanize the brand? How do I tell that story that really resonates and truly gets my customer go, just love that brand, right? And that goes into the products versus brands, which I'm sure you and I can geek out
Oh,
for
yeah.
a long time. But I just think that's another fascinating thing, which is what I love about integrated communications. And there's a time and place and a space for everything from earned and influencer, social to performance, paid, all the things they work together. There's not a magic button says this is the thing you should be doing. And I think that's another thing that brands, especially if they haven't done a lot of marketing in the past, or maybe they've relied too heavily on one type of marketing, need to understand right now that it is a combination of tactics, and that combination may look different today than it will 6 months from now. So you have to be on it, and you have to partner with the right experts who are in the trenches day in and day out and understanding what levers need to be pulled and how to tell the story in the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think more than anything, the brand storytelling is the flywheel that continues to grow it, regardless of how much money you're investing. Like it's the brand, that brand loop is what drives that second, third, fourth purchase and reaching more people. But I think one interesting way we have worked with brands that don't have a huge budget and can't be everywhere all time from a paid perspective is I do what we call our kind of operation everywhere type strategy. And essentially what we do is focus on like what's your one main traffic driver we can do. And so maybe that's Meta for some, and maybe it's Google, maybe it's all organic. But the way we can be everywhere for a consumer at all times is we drive one heavy traffic source and then we retarget them
Mm,
everywhere. So then
right.
we can place pixels on every single major network and different type of environment. So regardless if they're going to TikTok or LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube or across the open web, we can retarget them everywhere. So then you kind of have this brand impact where it feels like this brand is huge and everywhere to a subsegment of your audience that you're getting to drive to your website or
Great.
engage with one of your social channels or things like that. So there's like again, like it comes back to like how do you be strategic with like where your brand is and what level you can compete in the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. I think it all starts with brand storytelling and investing in that brand up front and making sure we're consistent about it. And not because the minute we create confusion in the marketplace, people zone out. They're like, I'm confused. I got to go over here now. So, and I always talk about the 3 C's for the brand to be clear about their proposition. What is our value? What are we here for? Why do we exist? Right. For it to be compelling. How are we different? What makes us unique? And then consistency, consistently showing up and resharing that story. And sometimes when we start working with a new company that's launching, they'll say, okay, well, these are the 10 things that are important to us. We're like, great, let's take that down a notch. Because if we tell our customers about the 10 things, they're going to remember 0 things. So how do we bring that in? And the same thing for thought leadership as well. And I've struggled with this in the past. I'm like, well, I'm passionate about 20 different things, but I can't talk about all of them at all times. So just finding the right ways to tell that brand story is so paramount. And then finding the ways to amplify that, like you said, through different platforms, whether it's digital and it's on Meta and it's on blogs and publications, and then offline as well with outdoor advertising, as well as activations, events, and all sorts of different engagement opportunities.
Absolutely, because I think that's the big opportunity that I'm seeing is like where are your competitors or other people not grabbing attention? And then could you place theirs? And that's why I think we're seeing like a revival and things like direct mail has had a bit of a revival. Out of home has. I think experiential is going up a lot
Mm.
because
Oh, it's
how
huge. It's
how
having
do
a
you
massive.
yeah, how do you resonate deeper relationship with a consumer is like in person, interactive is probably like one of the most valuable touch points. And so I see a lot of those things are rising up outside of digital. And this is something like we buy 95% of our media is digital media, but I see still think there's huge opportunity in all of those physical, real world type of interactions that you can have with brands.
Absolutely. And depending on the industry and the brand, I think, cultural relevance is so huge, right? And companies are jumping on so many cultural moments. Taylor Swift and Kelsey announced where the wedding is, and all of a sudden these brands are talking about 5 things to wear to a wedding, and here are the best drinks that the couple will probably be drinking, and these are the types of chocolates they might serve. And it's just because consumers are paying attention to things that are happening in the world, especially all the good news to counter some of the, stressful global events. And so the brands are like, okay, we want to be part of those conversations. We want to talk about that and we want to engage and have that emotional connection. And rightfully so. Sometimes brands do take it too far. And so from a PR standpoint, we have to be mindful. Does this really fit the brand? Or are we quote unquote ambulance chasing? Because we don't want to do that. We do want to be part of trending conversations, but that's why a PR strategy or integrated comp strategy is also very important to keep eyes and ears on the brand and not doing something and stepping outside that's going to really dilute it or disrupt it or create confusion or chaos or backlash. I mean, crisis communications as a big industry, it's something we do as well. We know that it really truly does take a couple of seconds to completely turn the brand on its head, whether it's for a thought leader or a C-suite executive, or it is for a brand by posting something, tweeting something, or Xing something. So that's another thing to be mindful of is, okay, now you're out there. Let's make sure that what you're saying and how you're saying it and when you're saying it is appropriate.
Yeah. So you wanted to make sure it's still authentic to who you are, that it doesn't come off as fake or, and
Yes,
also doesn't create a crisis,
correct. Yep.
which both of those terrify me. And that's why I didn't enter the PR space.
Yeah. There used to be that it takes 30 years. I just talked about it to someone. It takes 30 years to build a reputation, 30 seconds to destroy it. I do think it could take way less to build a reputation these days with everything that we're covering, all the digital tools. There are so many newer brands. I mean, look at a brand like Viore, speaking of a Southern California brand. Less than 10 years, I want to say, that it's really been out there. And highly valued nowadays. Didn't take 30 years. Similarly, you look at brands that have been around for a long time and they misstep and all of a sudden it's just stock plunges, the C-suites is, resigns, all these things happen. So I think making sure that it is true to the brand, it's authentic. You're not just trying to grab at a bunch of different things and having a strategy, but acting quickly and turning things quickly to be part of viral moments that do make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. As AI continues to kind of disrupt your world and media relations, all that, what do you see out of like, what's the skill set you look for out of the younger people entering in to the marketplace? Like, what skill sets do you think they need to have in order to kind of adapt and evolve in kind of where this next generation's going with all the things that, technology and AI can do?
One of our core values at Crowe Media and Crowe PR is entrepreneurial mindset. And I've actually had to qualify it a few different ways over the last couple of years because I think being entrepreneurial is a wide range of skill sets. And I said, well, ability to pivot and ability to think quickly and ability to problem solve. So yes, yes, yes. And I think one of the skill sets that I really look for nowadays in this ever changing landscape is curiosity above all. Being curious, okay, how is this going to work? Let me try this. Let me test this. Because to your point earlier, we do need to test things. No one's worked in this landscape before. We're all newbies here. And even though we have a million AI experts popping up, fantastic. Those are also new professions. And that technology is really intelligent. So I think being curious and coming and saying, okay, wow, I'm really curious. And then the second one I would say is resilience. The ability to take on challenges and face obstacles and bounce right back. I think that's a really important skill in this world because it is so dynamic. It is changing so fast. And we have to evolve and adapt. And those that are uncomfortable with change, I think are at a disservice. So the faster we can get or you can get comfortable with the discomfort and the change, I believe that's a really great skill set. And I think both of those are workable. You may not be born curious. I'm born very curious. I have so many questions about everything. But even if you're not, that's okay. Learn to be curious. Just start being, like start researching, start looking. And same thing with adaptability and resilience. Those are skills I think you can flourish. Was that the right word? You can nurture, but you have to want to do it. Both of those.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all those are really like skills you can train and develop. And most people don't start off with high levels of curiosity, resilience, or whatnot, but you can like grow and learn and adapt. And you're 100% right. Is the one thing we know for sure is that there's going to be significant amount of change, and change is happening faster and more consistent. So being able to be adaptable, which I think both of those really work hand in hand with kind of how the marketplace works. Is like you have to be curious about how things are changing, then you have to be resilient to be able to adapt and adjust and continue to push through as things evolve and disrupt.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're going to get left behind, or there's really not going to be much opportunity.
Yeah, the only thing we're certain about is that things are continuously changing. And with AI, with technologies, with demographics changing, careers changing. It used to be that people would go work for the same company for 30 to 40 years. And nowadays it looks so different. I think that's the constant is it's always going to change. And so I think reinvention and the ability to continuously reinvent your strategy and the things that you're doing is this really, really important skill set to have and figuring that. And look, it's better to learn resilience, not because you're going through tough times. That's often how people figure out resilience by having hard times. Why not learn it when you're not having hard times? That'll
Yeah,
make it easier. Then when the
yeah,
hard times come, you're already prepared. So I think, yeah, I think those two traits, the curiosity and the ability to adapt to change and be resilient to it, are really going to serve well in this new environment.
absolutely. And then a lot of agency founders, like they kind of get stuck in the kind of practitioner model rather than being a leader. And something I think we talked about in our first like intro call was like you've really started to build out and really focus on the relationships and building an agency and building in different partnerships and connections, all of that. Like, how did you transition, or what was your process like of transition from like practitioner, like doing the actual PR work and really being in the day to day, to like focusing on building your agency and being the leader and founder?
Yeah, I think for every entrepreneur, you start, you're in the business and on the business. You don't have any other options. You've got to do the work and then you've got to make sure you're growing the business to do the work. And so you're wearing these hats and it's tough and you have to do it. You don't have a choice. You can't afford to pay anybody. You just have to do it. And you know the standard that you want to set and you want to make sure you do your best work. So I think for me it was about creating the values and making sure that I'm hiring people based on the values of the company. It's creating that mission statement, that vision, and the why, and making sure that whoever comes to the agency is aligned with that. And then creating some initial sets of processes and sort of a proven process of this is how we do the work. This is what makes this company different. And I did all that before I hired my first person because I'm like, what am I explaining to this person I'm interviewing? What makes your company different? I don't know, me, right? And that's not enough. And so I was really adamant about let me create a little bit of structure, just a little bit, enough to have the right people come in. And then, there's a great book, Who, and then hiring the right people who are different from me. I didn't always do this correctly. I've hired people who I really like because we were similar, and that served the company for a while, for sure. Learned quickly that, you know what, we need opposites. We need people who understand the framework that we're building, help contribute to that framework, and really help shape the company. And so it's that 80-20 rule. I think it started at 80% in the business. And my
Mhm.
goal was get to 80% on the business. But in order to do that, we've got to have some systems in place. We've got to have some standards in place, have to have the right people who can write the system. There's that saying, something like, I'm going to butcher it, of course, create the system and then have people run the system, right? So there is that need for it. And then the last thing I would say is continuously review it and change it. And I think when we built the company and it was 6 employees, when we got to 15, what worked for six no longer worked for 15. So you have to break a few things and then rebuild them to go to 15. And then you get to 25 and you're like, wait, I no longer can just reach over to the person and tell them what's going on. I have to do it in another way. So that continuous assessment, and then the industry changes. We didn't talk to clients about AEO and GEO 18 months ago, but now, okay, we have to have this conversation. So also the training and making sure we're always being vigilant and relevant in what we do.
Awesome, amazing. I love all that. you went to the Canes and all that. Just in your general experience, what are you kind of looking forward to? What do you see as the big opportunities kind of coming up in the industry?
Hmm. You know, Cannes Lions was a very cool event. I recommend going, although it was double in size this year than last year. And a lot of what I saw was really the application of how we leverage AI with the human element quite a bit. A lot of what I saw spoke to cultural relevance and how brands can really be part of the conversations. I would say another part was these offline activations and finding ways to connect in an online setting. And but the last thing, I think the overarching piece, what really resonated and came out was not building followers, not building fan audiences, but building community. And the sooner and the more organically brands can build community, the longer, I mean, that's trust, that's brand loyalty, right? That's brand ambassadors, all of that is shaped from community. And so finding ways to build community online and finding ways to build community offline. And that ratio will be different depending on the industry and the brand, if it's B2B versus B2C. But I think having those brand promoters and community was something that really a lot of companies spoke about at Cannes Lions this year. And it makes sense, right? Because again, we're trying to differentiate brands from products. And we want to have an emotional connection for our customers to have an emotional connection to the brands that we represent. And community is a great way of doing it. It's not the only way of doing it. And again, I think it's different levers for different things. But I think there's something to be said for building that sort of a loyal community of people who engage with your brand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the kind of like a pivotal step in a brand's evolution, right? It's like, do you have a strong community ambassadors that are with you no matter what? They're going to go out of their way. They're going to pay extra to buy from your brand. They're going to go out of their way time wise to buy from your brand and stay connected with your brand because it represents a part of who they are. And I think how you build that is going to be different online, offline, B2C, B2B, but fundamentally it's like every brand's trying to get there to that
Yeah,
place.
how you build it and then how you continue to engage it. Like when at Cannes, they had every big brand pretty much had either like a beach activation or a hotel activation. And in that, they'd bring people in and then they would engage them in certain ways. Like Canva was doing different personalized tote bags. Sports Beach was doing personalized luggage tags. Others were giving away free books. Again, just trying to drive some engagement to create that connection. A lot of brands had celebrities come on stage and talk about a topic that that was close to what the brand stood for. So there's different ways of doing it. And I think it's just going to be interesting to see because in this world of AI, in this world of quote unquote fake content, a lot of brands just came back and being like, okay, wait a second, wait a second. And how do we really become more real because that's now a competitive space. Everybody's throwing AI at the problem. Brands like, oh, I can create all my social on AI. It's totally fine. And then realizing, wait a second, that may not be the right strategy either.
Yeah, absolutely. I talked to a creative guy and he was like, we want to use AI that we use it so good you can't even tell that we use AI. Is that's how authentic and on brand it is that it resonates with people. They don't even know that there's any AI used within it. And I was like, yeah, I think that seems like the North Star is that does it improve efficiencies, operational things like you discussed before, and you still get a really good output in terms of a like on brand message
Yeah.
and storytelling. That's the
Yes.
output.
Yep. Exactly.
Last question for you. If you give yourself one piece of advice when you're starting your agency, what would it?
One piece of advice when I was starting my agency. Oof, I have so much advice for myself. Every day I'm like, okay, I'm aware that I need to work on this and, et cetera. I would say give yourself some grace and be patient. Not a very patient person. When I have an idea and I want to go execute, I want to get it done, sometimes that same day. And if I don't hit it exactly as I wanted to, I'd give myself a hard time. And I think it's just we as leaders have to give ourselves compassion and remove self judgment from ourselves in order to do the same for others. And, put in the work, put in the time, put in the creativity and the curiosity, and also give yourself some time and space and grace.
Awesome. Amazing. Love it. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me today. It was an honor having you on.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed the conversation, James.